Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Higher Education Tableau User Group October 2025 meeting. We're so thrilled you could join us today. I don't know about you, but I can't believe it's almost the end of October. And we've got a fabulous agenda for you today. We're going to start with our usual welcome and announcements, followed by Joe O'Brien from Michigan State University, who will be presenting on From Playing Doctor to Becoming a Doctor, a Residency Matching Dashboard. And then Evan Alini from Vanderbilt University is going to give us a TC25 Encore extended Vandy Conquers the Cloud in 24. Happy moving to the cloud anniversary, Evan. And then we're going to have HETUG community talk about looking back at TC25 and looking forward to TC26 before we do our typical wrap up and chat. We've got several announcements for you today, but before we dive into those, does anyone want to come off mute, share any announcements they may have, any job openings, any events that they think might be, useful for the community? So we invite you to go ahead and do that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, yes, Gabrielle, we can hear you.
Hi, I am a research analyst at Portland State University, and I wanted to put a plug in for a position that it's not yet posted, but will be posted in a couple weeks. It is a senior level Tableau creator and research analyst in the Office of Student Success here at Portland State University, which is, if you don't know, a public research university in Portland, Oregon. The position could be in person or it could be remote, with the caveat that if you're remote, you have to live in Washington State or Oregon. So I will be putting the general jobs site in the chat. And you can also send me an email. I'll put my email and my LinkedIn in there as well if you have any questions. I'm on the search committee, so I can answer any questions you might have. Yeah, I hope to see some of your names in the pool. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And you can also share that on the Slack page Open Positions channel if you are a member. And if you're not, I think Roshni put the link in there. Any other announcements? All right, if there are no more takers, then we can move on to our announcements, and I will turn it over to James.
Hello. So I just had the privilege of attending Dreamforce in San Francisco. Got to meet some new members of the Data Fam and attend some sessions such as the Tableau keynote. But if you were not able to attend or did not have a chance to watch it while it was going on, you still have time. You can go to Salesforce Plus. They're streaming over 500 sessions there, some on Tableau, a lot on Salesforce. But it's something recommend watching some of the sessions, especially the keynote where they did speak up or talk up to the data fam and how much the community means to Tableau. And if you would like to attend the Dreamforce in the future, next year it's going to be in September. So September 15th through 17th, once again in San Francisco. And so now for some news that a lot of people have been waiting for about something at TC.
So, one of the coolest parts of TC is watching three contestants on the stage building out dashboards in 20 minutes, dashboards that have all sorts of really cool interaction, a lot of depth, and also tell a story with really cool design elements. And that is IronViz. And in order to make that stage, there's this whole qualifying process, and we are smack dab in the middle of it. So, IronViz, win or learn, you can't lose. And this year's theme for the qualifiers is food and beverage. So there's a month between now, or well, 3 weeks and change, between now and November 21st. If you create a viz that meets the theme of food and beverage, more information is on the website that is now in the chat. You can submit it, post it on Tableau Public, tag it with IronViz, and you might be, hold on, there we go, right slide. you might end up being one of the top 10 or one of the 3 finalists who actually gets to compete at IronViz. It's a really cool way to learn a lot about what Tableau can do and does allow you to do in ways that you may not get to do at work, because a lot of us are just building plain old boring but still very useful and impactful business dashboards. But IronViz really lets you sort of be a little bit more creative with what you create or with your vizzes. So check out the website for details. There are a couple of Tableau user groups that will focus on IronViz and the qualification process. So check out some of those recordings as well. And oh yeah, there's prizes. There's really cool prizes. And James and I have both judged the IronViz qualifiers the last few years, and you see such a great group of dashboards out there from that have really interesting designs as well as really cool analysis. So being someone who gets to create that for fun is actually a little bit of fun too. So and then one thing that's happening right after the IronViz qualifiers end is another conference. James, tell us about it.
Yes, so this one's probably going to be a little bit more niche for this group, but if you happen to be in Europe in early December, either because you live there or are taking a early December vacation, just consider dropping by the DataFam Europe. The registration is currently open. There'll be a lot of good speakers like Steve Adams will be there. I'm also going there because I decided to build my vacation around this. So yeah, definitely, if you're going to be in the area, go to it. You can never have enough opportunities to meet DataFam members. Now, to broaden it out slightly, this is a bit more local. There will be probably FAM members here, but it's also much broader than that. Is HETW, so the Higher Education Data World Conference will be in Austin next April. Think of it as if you've ever been to the analytics day, it's going to be kind of similar to that, except there's more days in person because they cover a wide variety of topics. Previously, it was called the data warehouse. When I heard of it about then, I never even considered going because I have nothing to do with data warehousing. They changed the name. Georgia Tech hosted it last year, so I said it's only cost registration. I don't need a hotel or anything. I'll go. And you learn a lot because I said they do cover so much different types of data categories at this conference. So definitely consider going next April to Data Warehouse, but it will be competing close with Tableau Conference because Tableau Conference is up about a week or two after this.
And the proposals for HETW,
yeah.
they're open. They're open until this. Actually, I think is that the same day? It's the same deadline as IronViz. So, maybe you do both. I don't know.
And you can also get a twofer because if you're going to do a proposal for HEDW, you could also submit that proposal later to speak at Tableau Conference, assuming you're going to be speaking about the Tableau topic. But if you're talking about Tableau, definitely try to do a twofer for your presentation and submit to both HEDW and later to the Tableau Conference when their proposals open up.
And Becker just put in the chat that Becker's at UT in the Data to Insights team, if I'm remembering correctly. And they're hosting, so I guess my memory is not totally shot. But they'll be hosting HETW, so it's going to be amazing and awesome. And Austin's a fun, weird little town, so good luck to everyone who submits a proposal. And with that, Ginny.
It's my turn again. Austin is a fun little town. That's where I went to my first Tableau conference. And I think, Roshni, you might have too.
Yeah, mine too. We did not cross paths until years later during the pandemic, but that's how life is.
It is. All right, so it is my honor to introduce Joe O'Brien. Joe has been in the business intelligence and analytics space for over 25 years. He has led teams in sales engineering and support for Cognos, Oracle, Tableau, and Salesforce. And currently he supports Michigan State University in developing impactful Tableau content across the university. Joe lives in Fenton, Michigan, and has 2 sons, pictured above, James and Michael. And Joe's going to be talking about from playing doctor to becoming a doctor, a residency matching dashboard. Joe, welcome. I'll turn it over to you.
Good. No, I appreciate it. Thank you for the very nice introduction. Let me just get my slide shared here and we'll get started. You can see me. Let me go into full screen. Just a quick check. How's that look?
Looks good.
All right, good deal. Well, again, I appreciate you letting me join here. I think I was committed to doing this presentation a couple of months ago, and then life got in the way. So I appreciate you having me back. It's really I've listened to a lot of the recordings of this tug as I'm relatively new to higher ed, so really kind of catching up on some of the jargon, what people are doing out there. So I appreciate it. Just a little bit about me. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but before we start, I've only been with MSU since January, the beginning of the year. My focus and well, I'll say I've been with Michigan State, and one of the things I don't normally put on a slide ever at Michigan State is that I actually graduated from the University of Michigan. So I don't put that on the slide, but it's just a little fun fact. But my focus is on Tableau. I got hired in there because the Tableau was growing. There's one of my coworkers, Morgan, really has done a nice job kind of starting the practice and getting a lot of people on board. We'll talk a little bit about the scale of Tableau at Michigan State, but Morgan has done a really great job there. I've spent just a little bit about my background. I've kind of go back a long way. Got started with back when we called this stuff reporting and business intelligence, I guess, back with Cognos back in '97. Spent a lot of years there, then went to Oracle as they kind of started their BI practice, acquiring a lot of companies, including Hyperion and Brio and all those types of companies that those of us that have been around long enough have probably touched and used at one point or another. But then Tableau came around, and they were kind of a growing company out of out of Seattle, out of Fremont, Seattle, and it really seemed like an interesting play, and so I was able to join them just after their IPO in 2015, I think it was. Their IPO was maybe a year or two earlier, and I had a good run there. Mostly, if most of you folks know, if you have a Tableau account manager, there's usually a technical person with them called a sales engineer or a sales consultant. That was always my role, and then I went into technical leadership as a SE leader, a sales engineering leader and director. Then went into support and did a couple different things, but that's always kind of been my world, is the reporting and analytics, and it's been very interesting over the years learning the ins and outs of different businesses. But I'm new to higher education, which has been a great challenge for me. As you know, my last role was I worked a lot with the Department of Defense, and I thought there were a lot of acronyms in that. But man, higher education has more acronyms than I think the federal government. So I'm learning every day on what some of those things mean and understanding the needs of the different departments. So it's been very interesting because it's very it's a big university. It's a big business, and a lot of different ways to look at data. They do a very good job of managing the data there too. So it's been a pleasure coming in to do Tableau. Again, just Fenton, Michigan, with just a small kind of a small town just outside of Flint, Michigan. So let me go on. I'll talk a little bit about Tableau at Michigan State. Just a few screenshots of some of the interesting things that myself and some other folks have done over the years. We have I looked at kind of the user count on our servers today. We have just under 25,000 users, which was incredible to me. I just being new to higher education, really didn't appreciate the scale of a large public university like this, and how many employees and students and alumni and everything else that are there involved in a university like this. So about 25,000 users. Most are relatively casual. A lot of just dashboard people come in once a week, once a month. But we're starting to develop a little bit better of a community. That's something that I love to do at Tableau, is I attended and presented and worked many Tableau conferences, and a lot of those things center around community and community development. So it's been interesting trying to get more and more people more involved in Tableau, and not having to do so much development work as we might have done earlier. So we do have some people that do have a lot of desktop licenses out there and do some development work. We kind of provide work for those departments, those teams that may not have dedicated IT or analytics support. And so we'll do kind of beginning to end analytic development and support for those teams as well. And that's a large part of what I do. We do have separate, I don't touch the servers a whole lot as much as I used to in terms of infrastructure. We have a separate, a very talented team that keeps our servers humming and up to date, and do a very good job. So that's not really something that I have to worry about much, mostly just serving the users. So yeah, that is just a sense for kind of what we do. And I don't imagine it's a lot different than many other large public universities that are represented on the phone here today. But it's been interesting for me, and it's been a learning experience. So it's been a lot of fun. A little bit about, I mean, I think these are kind of some of the typical, departments. I think there were 37, we have our production server separated by site at this time, 37 separate departments, and, run the gamut of just about everything like you would think from, research, institutional, HR, finance, athletic stuff, and a lot of smaller ones. I actually just created, which I never thought I would, a dashboard for people at the rec centers to look up alumni. So people coming in to want to join one of the rec centers at Michigan State University, and they had no way to tell if they're an alumni or not because all the data that they had available were just current student data. So created something for them to look it up, but never thought about that as a Tableau application, but it was kind of cool. So yeah, learning something every day, and learning a lot from the people at the university. We got some pretty talented developers that I learn from every day. We also, just like, I'm sure in your lives, Tableau isn't the only game in town. It's a very large Cognos implementation here. I don't know how many tens of thousands of users and monthly or weekly impressions that they get of the Cognos environment, but it's a lot. And it's pretty much what you'd expect from Cognos. I worked in that Cognos environment for about 10 years before they got acquired by IBM. But they do what they do very well, right? Very highly formatted, kind of statutory reports. Most everything gets bursted out via email or PDF or Excel documents, and just very kind of operational reporting. They do it very well. And so that really is the where Cognos plays. And we have a much larger team supporting the Cognos environment, certainly, than we do Tableau. So, but that hums along pretty well. Power BI, that's upcoming. I'm starting to learn a little bit about supporting Power BI. We don't support the development environment yet. We do support the back-end infrastructure, creating gateways, personal gateways for different groups that need it. But that's just like everything else. Power BI is becoming, more and more a platform of choice, especially for smaller departments that just want to get started and are pretty Microsoft centric. So. And then, of course, Tableau. I believe it got started at Michigan State, just like anything else. But I think a lot of the early users, and I'm noticing today, I just had a conversation today, are very adept at the mapping capabilities. I see a lot of, really separate, even customized maps that they do, because they do a lot of an analysis on whether it be funding or student success or whatever it might be, across different demographics, across different zip codes, in areas of, population centers. So it's a lot of it has to do with representing data geographically. So that's really kind of how Tableau, I think, really kind of got some momentum early on at Michigan State, and it really went from there. So and everything, like I said, I put that multiple data sources because it just seems like just about everything I run into, people are trying to connect data together. Even though we have a very well done Oracle Exadata data warehouse, there's always some current data sitting in a spreadsheet somewhere that people want to hook up to. So So that's kind of a sense for the environment. And I don't imagine it's atypical or any different than anything most of the people on the phone support today. So it was mentioned that the project, this actually just came up a couple of months ago, and it was kind of nice that I was able to rejoin as this was kind of my focus for the last, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks back and forth. But the School of Osteopathic Medicine, the School of Medicine came to me looking for a way to really do their career advising group actually specifically came and looking for a much better way to advise students on which programs and which specialties supporting those programs are their best chance of entering into based on their scores and their academic record. So it's a yearly process that the career advising group goes through to assemble all of the data in terms of where their students got placed into different residency programs across the country. And they track what their scores were on 3 or 4 different, some required, some optional entrance exams. Some are different across different specialties. Military things are different. So a lot of different requirements across different specialties and programs, and trying to understand so that they can advise students based on their scores or based on whether they should take a particular test or not, what programs are they best advised to apply to? Because some specialties are much more competitive than others. Some programs, which are hospitals, teaching hospitals, are much more competitive, even more so within those individual specialties. So based on their scores, they have a limited number of time and frankly funds to apply to different schools, and there are different windows of opportunity to do that. So they want to be much more informed on how to sit down with a particular student who might be a medical school student who might be interested in a particular specialty, say, internal medicine or family practice or oncology, to see, okay, based on the scores that I have, which programs are I most likely to get accepted in? What is the historical acceptance rates in those based on my particular scores? So very, very difficult to do based on, I mean, the data that they had available was, essentially Excel spreadsheet, just historical data, one line, one row per student per match, looking at their individual scores and their programs that they had been accepted to. And it was good data, it's very wide data, had a lot of attributes and a lot of good information. But it was very difficult for them to really do anything and answer any questions ad hoc. They put together a large, which I think I may be able to show you, a large PDF document that just spanned a lot of data and a lot of specialties, basically showing the success rates across different specialties and different programs. So, but it was just like anything else when people come to us for Tableau. Not a lot of ways to answer the ad hoc question or the more subtle, just more subtle questions. So here's what they had. There's a little just a pretty typical kind of report that you've all seen when someone comes to you and say, "Hey, can I do this in Tableau?" And that makes you shudder a little bit. But basically, being in the business a while, I knew that I couldn't just replicate this. That wouldn't be a whole lot of value, even if I could do it. So as we all know, you try to ask the deeper question. What are they trying to answer? What's the next question they're trying to answer? What are the other things historically that they haven't been able to help their students with? So, and then you kind of get off the actual format of it in terms of requirements and get into something more in terms of analytics. What are we trying to do? What answers are we trying to provide, and what type of flexibility are we trying to give the people that are sifting through the data? So that's pretty much what it is. You can kind of look at some of the questions that I look back on one of the original emails and some of the questions that the response that I got from, hey, what questions are we trying to answer? Did anyone who matched into a particular specialty that was hired on into that particular program have a failed board score, right? Because if someone may have failed a board, and the program they're looking at has never accepted anyone who's failed a board score, then it's probably advisable to look at a different program, but at least different options. So what range of scores are there for a particular specialty? They're really interested in ranges of scores. So I could see, do my scores fall within this particular range of students who have been accepted in a particular residency program at a particular hospital. So those types of things, and also patterns, right? We're starting to get more and more data. I think I originally did this on a single year of data, which is fine when you're first starting out and developing it. But then I think we added in 4 years of data, so they're starting to see, over time, what are their more competitive programs? What are their more programs that are more accepting of people that maybe have a lower board score or a failed one? And what are the more popular programs nationwide that MSU students are being accepted in? So it's been a very good success, and they keep coming to me for more. And I obviously do a terrible job of managing the the requirements, and just kind of because it's kind of a fun project, so we kind of gotten more and more done. But I'll show you a little bit of it here in just a second. So actually, just in case I couldn't access the server today, it's been up and down. I put some screenshots together, but let me see if I can show it to you live, and I'll take any questions live while I try to pull that up. Grab my browser again. Okay. Should be able to still see it. Can I get a thumbs up or a yes from anyone? Can you still see my screen?
Yep, can.
All right, good deal. So this is just there's 5 or 6 sheets on in this particular, or dashboards in this particular workbook. I'll take you, just maybe kind of give you the harbor tour through it. This is part of it. They really haven't done a good job of keeping this updated, but it's basically, they wanted that their idea was to give people instructions on how to use it, but it seems to be pretty easy to use, and so they don't keep it up to date too much. But one of the first things they wanted to do was look at regionally, right, and look at across individual placement years, which means the year that particular student was placed in a residency program. Where did they get placed across which specialty? So across in this, we looked at these are the individual, they call specialties, right? And they sometimes they get a few might be merged into one or two, but you have emergency medicine, urology, all the way down to dermatology and thoracic. So there's many of them. So you can kind of see over the past between 23 and 25, 170 students have been placed in residency programs in emergency medicine, 22 in diagnostic radiology, orthopedic surgery, 24. So this bar represents how many people were placed in particular programs. And if you want to, you can, obviously you can click on any map and see who was placed where, because you have many students that are looking to go into a particular region, and they'll look at a particular state and see what is interesting to them for that state. But if you look at, say, someone who wanted to get into, say, pediatrics, you click on that and it'll say, well, we can see where they've been placed across the state, how many people have been placed. One of the things I'll mention, you'll see that it'll show the one here. I had to be very careful, and I'm sure you guys know this as well as anyone, much better than I do. Got to make sure you can identify an individual person, the score for their the FERPA, I believe it is so I had to put a lot of security around this to make sure I could see details. But if there were only one student that was placed here, you didn't want them, or less than 3, they didn't want them to be able to triangulate and find out who that actual person was, because we don't have any individual identifiers here, but we just show them at a higher level. And we do show scores where you can't triangulate and find an individual, the identity of an individual student. But other than that, we hide all that and mask all that. So the same thing here. And if I just want to go back and I could just see who, all those that placed in Michigan. So just your typical interaction with the Tableau dashboard in terms of being able to you look at data geographically, look at different specialties, look into the different hospitals that they were placed in here. Again, there's no you'll notice this really isn't specific to scores. As you guys know, as you develop dashboards, you start to get more and more requirements and more things, and you start to put way too much on one particular dashboard or sheet. And so, you start to strip that out. So I just ended up calling this a kind of a regional dashboard, hit all the actual scores and just focused on placements across different regions. You get into the ones that I think are much more useful for them when a student comes to sit down with the advisors and they want to look at okay, I have a certain score, or I expect to get a certain score on a particular test, and these are the COMLEX and the USMLE Step 2 and Level 2 scores. They want to see, okay, if my COMLEX score is 700, say, what are the ranges of scores that someone was placed into emergency? So all the people that were placed into emergency medicine, their scores ranged from 302 to 810. And of course, this is across all years. The average score was 556. There were 170 placements. And one interesting thing where I said, well, if my score is 700, this number is notating is how many students were placed that have a score below 700. And so you'll notice is if you get down into some of these more, I guess you'd maybe call them more competitive things, you'll see that, 38 were placed and 35 were below. So if I get down to say, maybe let's take a score of 500 and enter that in, it'll filter that data and you'll start to see, well, in general surgery, radiographic diagnostic, well, there are 22 placements, but only one of them were below that particular score. General surgery, there are 28 placements, but only 3 of them were below 500. And then you can see the individual ranges still with a little bit of flyouts here with our tooltips. So that's kind of what we've done across everything. It kind of repeats across the different the different score types. And I can't remember which one of these tests are optional versus required, because one of the questions that they have is, should I take this particular test and will it help me in a particular program? So that's probably another, actually it is one of them I developed for them. We can take a look at. Another one, I think the most recent addition was this one where we were looking at just some raw numbers across specialties. So if I wanted to look at if I was interested in a particular specialty, and on the left-hand side, each row represents a program that a student has matched into over the years. And this is all years. I didn't want this to filter. So if I want to look at, say, anesthesiology, I can see that these are the number of or the programs that people have matched into. There were 10 that were matched into Henry Ford here in Michigan, the Cleveland Clinic. There were 2 of them. And then if you just go across, you can kind of see the average level 2 score, the average step 2 score. They also wanted to see, was anyone accepted that had a failure? So I had 8 people were placed. 2 of those 8 actually failed their level 1, but were still accepted. And then you can get down here as well. So you can go across a lot of different, you can kind of see it starts to get narrow and narrow as you go into neurology, what I've learned is a very competitive program. You start to see that there aren't many that are accepted that are failed any particular score. They also wanted to combine this view, which has a lot of nice low-level detail. Oh, I guess before I go into that, what you'll notice is, again, one of those not being able to put personally identifiable information in there. So, because if I only had 2 placements or one person got placed at St. Joseph's in California, they'd be able to find out who that person is, and their scores aren't something that are that they can reveal. So we ended up saying, well, I want to see how many are placed, but if it's less than the three, I just want to blank out their scores, which is a little bit trickier than you think it would be. So took a minute to kind of find a strategy to do that, but it worked out pretty well. But if you remember the score ranges with these little barbells, they really become, I don't want to say attached to them, but I think they're a very useful visual form. And they wanted to incorporate that in here somehow, but it gets very, very noisy, right? If you look at this, you don't want to put a whole lot more information on this particular dashboard than is already there. And if you could, God bless you. I just I just couldn't figure out a way to make it nice. So what I did is I put those in a tooltip. So I just created a little icon out here. If you look at, I'll go somewhere down here, and actually just change those little barbells with a few different filters on them to get to a different level of granularity. But I put a lot of information in the tooltip that isn't sitting out there on the dashboard. So I can see all the placements, a little bit of percentages, and then took those ranges and placed those three separate worksheets in a tooltip. And they seem to like that. I may move it out into maybe a separate container or something so it's a little more permanent, but they seem to like this view and the ability to go from row to row and look at the individual ranges. And you'll notice here in the tooltips, because there are less than three placements, I had to make sure that their individual scores or ranges weren't revealed. So those are kind of the most interesting ones. Some of them are a little bit more esoteric, and I think if you remember, this is not a very visual one, and it didn't really need to be. They wanted to see, okay, how many placements were there for people that only took, the step the step one test? How many took the step two test? And how many took both one and two, and what were their percentages in terms of acceptance rates? So I don't know if they use this a lot, but it was a question that they asked. I should look at the usage and see if they do it, but it was just a simple one to do that. Some of the administrators look at the box plot to kind of see if there's anything trending in terms of across different people that are responsible for different specialties to see, what are the placements looking like, and what are their successes looking like? Are there any real outliers that stand out in terms of placements and successes for a particular program or specialty? So, so that. Gosh, I know I ran through that pretty quick, but I do that because I'm very familiar with this stuff. I think that's all I have in terms of, I don't have any extraneous slides or anything. Are there any questions or any comments? And so I know we got some people that are much better at this than I am on here, and I'll certainly take any feedback or comments or questions.
Joe, I've got one on that box plots. Hold on, you had people who actually were okay with box plots?
Yeah, this
Tell me more. How did that
I
happen?
know.
How did you
I
convince
don't
them
know.
how to read them?
I don't well, that was the thing here. That's what we wanted to do over here, is to really explain I don't think they ever got around to it. I really wanted them to explain what that box plot was showing. Actually, maybe I did up here. Yeah. I put a little help thing up here. Looks like I lost my icon. Um, but and again, I don't know. They said this was more for they didn't want this to be used by the advisors, but more for the administrators that are looking at something like this. So I put something in there to kind of talk about what those shades represent in terms of quartiles, but I honestly don't know if it actually gets used very much, but this is one of those classic things where I think a visual kind of, sells the project, right? So I think they maybe use this to get some of the other work done. So, well, that game.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is really cool. I don't see any questions. I think there's just a lot of well, so this was me, but I love the use of the viz and tooltips. And some of the a lot of these vizzes are very simple, but they get the point across really easily. And
Yeah. Yeah,
Seems
and
like a really
they're
user-friendly.
they're simple not because I want them to be, it's because I'm not a talented dashboard creation guy. I'm I spent years in leadership and in data. I know my way around databases and data pipelines and I know reporting and analytics, but it takes a certain kind of talent to really come up with beautiful visuals. Um, I'm not that guy. So
Although, you could practice if you want to participate in Iron Viz, there's
oh,
an opportunity to practice with a fun food and drink data set. So
I
not
do
just
that.
you, but everyone.
I know. Well, shoot, I've actually that Iron Viz is the scariest thing for me because I never get to attend it live when I was working with Tableau. I was always in Tableau Doctor, which I don't know if anybody knows. That's a complete nightmare for Tableau employees to have to try to solve people's problems in the 30 minutes that are allowed. But that was
It's
always
your
after.
own version of Iron Viz, right? Like it's still
It
timed.
was 3 days of Iron Viz. You know what I mean? Just trying to help out very, very smart people with the problem that they couldn't solve for 3 months and they wait for you to solve it, So but no, Iron Viz is I'm a big believer in the workout Wednesdays and the makeover Mondays. And I've worked with a lot of those people over the years, and Mark Bradburn, who hosts Iron Viz now, I hired him into Tableau way back in the day, or actually convinced him to come into Tableau, and he's done really well. So it's been a good ride, but I appreciate the feedback. I just wish I could do some of the things that I've seen just on some of your on the tug meetings here. I'm getting there.
Well, we really appreciate you coming today. And I'm going to pass this over to James, who's going to introduce another Tableau alum in our midst as soon as I can find the screen share.
There's a lot of us out there.
There are, and we are really happy to have all of you guys join us in the higher ed space.
Okay, come off audio or come off mute. So okay, so from Vanderbilt, we have Evan Alini, who is the program director of data training and Tableau administration. He's been with Vanderbilt for about 3.5 years, and prior to that, for almost 2 decades as a trainer, certifier, and instructor uh, for Tableau and Salesforce. And then, sorry, uh, and he's also worked for some small consulting firms. He loves living in Nashville, which also known as the Music City, enjoys going to live concerts, playing tennis and pickleball, and playing guitar in his free time. And I believe that the picture is from, I think he said his first, did the screen not advance?
Oh, wait, yeah.
Oh, no, that's
Okay,
my
I was
fault.
gonna say, wait, so I was gonna say, there's a picture from the Vanderbilt game, but that's not a picture from the Vanderbilt game. So, so, so this will be the picture from the Vanderbilt game. I believe he said was one of the first games he went to. He picked a good time in the last couple of years to go to Vanderbilt, as they have actually become quite the football program. So I will go ahead and turn it over and hear about how to move from, I think, the server to the cloud.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. And thanks for that introduction. And I forgot I had that picture on there. It was in my slide deck, so we'll breeze through it. And Joe, yeah, I guess we must have crossed paths. In fact, I was looking through and I just realized we had a LinkedIn kind of connection a couple of months ago through Kirk Budd. So we'll have
Yeah,
to follow.
absolutely. Yeah, good people. We'll
Good
touch
to
base
remember.
later.
Yeah. So this is a reboot of my, what was a 20-minute presentation at Tableau conference this past April. And I guess I'm going to get a little bit more than that today. So I should have time to cover it. And it was called Vandy Conquers the Cloud. And this is our server to cloud migration. And we're literally at the 1-year anniversary of when we went live. So last October, I'll give you all the dates and stats, but that was when we did this. So happy to rehash this topic and give some folks advice. Now, here in Joe's implementation, we are a small private school, so it's a lot different contrast with the size of things. So if you are one of those large enterprise or public institutions that's got thousands of users, we had less than 1,000. So it's going to be a much smaller scale, but hopefully you can take something away from this migration lesson to know it works. And we were successful, and we've been on the cloud a year, and we're happy. So things are running well, and it's exciting. So let me just share with you my experiences. And yeah, I had that picture in there too. So that's my son, George. I actually have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old with my wife there, Stephanie. And I also have an ex-wife and a daughter that is 19 years old at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. So I got the big generation gap with kids there. Happy to have this new round because I've been in the BI field, very similar to Joe there. I came from the Business Objects SAP land, so the other reporting tool in the early 2000s. And that was Business Objects, Crystal Reports, and SAP. Those were all acquired together. And then, of course, I must have overlapped with Joe because I played Tableau Doctor in my less gray days. And that's a picture of me at a conference probably 5 or 6 years ago, prior to COVID for sure. I had to put my manager, Mariel O'Connor, on there. She's been a great mentor and support for all the work that we've done. And got me into doing a lot of the training. I was in global services at Tableau, so delivered a lot of training there. More leaning on the server side, and of course, as Joe said, the fun and stress of 30-minute support calls from people in person expecting you to solve their problems. And usually it didn't go so successfully, but it was a great experience. So I didn't get to be a real doctor, but I played one at conference. So you know about me. And a little other prop here to mention, I'll mention the consulting engagement we had with Interworks. They were wonderful in supporting our migration, and I'll tell you about some of the work they did. And then also this speech was also done at the advancement HETUG. So if you caught, it was actually done before the conference. So last February, it was this year, but seems like a long time ago. I also talked, that was kind of my warm up for the Tableau conference. So you can also check that one out if you're interested. So this is what I did, talk through the migration. I'll give you some of the stats about our definitely much smaller implementation than any public school, but the success stories we had, some of the planning, some of the things that you'll realize is it's not so much, and of course I've always been a technical trainer, hands-on kind of guy, but this had me wear my marketing hat and communications hat for a little while because that's half the battle right there, is just getting the message out that you guys are moving to a new platform or a new experience, and what are the changes, and that's what I'll try to capture here. But you can see the agenda there, and we'll go through that as we continue. So here's our stats. Like I said, it literally is a year away from when we went live. We started a few months prior to this in the summer, and I'll talk about that, but we were grandfathered in from the 8-core license that some of you may know and love so dearly from the old Tableau days, where you got unlimited explorers and viewers. And that's probably one of the biggest stress points for going for the cost perspective of going to cloud, because now you got to pay for your explorers and viewers. But again, just without getting into the details, I didn't assess the cost. That was management's and upper management and leadership's decision. So I was just recommending, and I was recommending the consulting services. That was my only push, but otherwise the cost ended up to be a wash. So it did even itself out. And with 100 creators, we had about 300 explorers and 400 viewers. We are only faculty and staff, by the way. We have nothing to do with students. So that was a big thing to keep our deployment a lot smaller. You know, occasionally I'll get queries from students, but unless they're a student worker or in a graduate program or working for an actual staff member, we don't allow any students onto our system. It's strictly faculty and staff. But I'll point out later, you'll see one of the things we did in lieu of the guest account, which was available in the old system, but not for anyone that needs access to a user account that doesn't need to log in. We're using Tableau Public for that. So we actually have a public account in the Vanderbilt name. So you can look us up, and anything that's public domain is certainly the way that we share things there without a login. But for the migration, of course, this is 2024. So we were on an older server that was getting upgraded about one time a year. And then we moved to 24.3 cloud. Certainly Tableau Pulse was one of the big driving factors for that, and just the ease of maintenance, the freeing up of IT resources, because I'm in a branch called Data and Strategic Analytics, which is completely separate from the IT department. So I wasn't even a server admin on the server deployment. So any type of configuration that needed to be at the server level was always an IT ticket request. So that was already one of the bottlenecks. And then the upgrades, they no longer had that, but I'll highlight some of those in this next slide after the stats. I'll kind of reiterate what Joe said on the dashboard design side. That's not my specialty and forte. I was more of the server trainer and administration type work. So I can design a dashboard, and I taught the desktop course, but not my expertise. And so if you see any anti-best practices here, please don't hold it against me. This one in particular is highlighting just all the numeric units from tags to flows to subscriptions. So you can see some of the stats. And then the next slide shows a before and after. And yes, I know, bad color coding, but I wanted to highlight two colored bars that you can see drastically changed. And I took out the tags because that wasn't really relevant for performance, but we wanted to keep track of it just from a status perspective. But the users, you can see, drop down. We actually, one of the things you'll learn in a migration, it becomes an audit process too. So we realized we had a lot of stale users. There was about 70 users that got axed from the system. Workbook wise, we actually trimmed down a couple of hundred workbooks that didn't need to be migrated over. And you can see we doubled the amount of permissions, but the big thing that really changed is this data connections. And the thing I'll highlight about that, it seems like a high maintenance thing, which to an extent it is, but what it did is it showed the self-service nature of Tableau Cloud versus server, which was all these people had Excel data sources that they were using just as their, add this and an attachment. And it wasn't a live connection to Excel, but now with Tableau Cloud and no need for a VPN, which I'll highlight in another slide, then we could actually use Tableau Cloud as a live data connection with the SharePoint online connection. So I took people through training, and everybody loved it, and they started migrating their Excel workbooks to Microsoft 365 and using the SharePoint online connection. And it's OneDrive, I think it's called. So because one of them got deprecated in the midst of our migration, so we had to struggle through that. But once we figured that out, it was a self-enablement. And these are for workbooks that were embedded connections. So notice we have a separate one. The brown bar is for published data sources, which was a much smaller number. So we went through a much tighter vetting process for published data sources. But the embedded workbook data connections, if they had an Excel workbook, we encouraged it. And yes, it's maintenance for me and the admins, but it made for better self-service and a lot more user engagement. So that was really exciting. And you can see this pre-migration was taken at October go live, and the post-migration was about 4 months later into 2025 at the beginning of the year. So you can kind of see the differences there. And I think we'll make this deck available through the higher ed user group if you want to see it. This is just another view of that. So then it came to the training aspect of things. We knew we were going through a new system. I could handle the technical aspect. I was recommending Interworks for some consulting support to free up my time for other training initiatives. And that this was part of these things that we would show people, which was understanding, for anyone that doesn't know Tableau Cloud, at least a year ago, the content structure was a little bit different on server than it was going to cloud, because cloud was promoting Tableau Pulse, and it was doing away with metrics and ask data. So that was right at the transition of our migration. So that was one of the big pieces we had to move. Luckily, we weren't using a lot of metrics or ask data lenses, so we didn't have to worry about that. But it engaged our end users post-migration to use Tableau Pulse a lot more, and it's become very popular. And we'll probably do some training down the line for Tableau Pulse for a lot of our users. So this is the server structure, of course, with permissions being a little bit different with lenses and metrics and data roles. And then, of course, you come to Tableau Cloud, and now is the case in Tableau Cloud with Tableau Pulse. You do away with metrics and the ask data permissions, and now you have just Tableau Pulse is embedded into the workbook permissions, or there's a way to enable Pulse metrics as one of the individual boxes here. I don't think this screenshot even captures it, but the other thing I'll add that technically was not because of the migration, but just the timing of our licensing was renewing in September. So that kind of guided our guideline to go live. It took us an extra month, but we were working in two systems simultaneously. But we use virtual connections. So that's a highlight of the data management add-on, or whatever they're going to call it these days. which is now being bundled as part of Tableau Next. But a year ago, we got kind of fortunate, and especially me being from Tableau, knowing how the licensing worked, I knew that data management was still a la carte. So thankfully, we had a kind of an open checkbook with our chief data officer at Vanderbilt. So she was able to cut the check and add on the Tableau add-on, and it still kept our price point at a wash. So we weren't paying more in the long run for the full year of Tableau Cloud. So that was a great benefit, and we're just starting to leverage that. We still don't have many virtual connections. We had 0 prior because we were getting it in September, the month before go live. So that was a nice feature to be added on. And of course, you get virtual connections, you get flow schedules. That was a big reason why we wanted that, because even though we weren't publishing a lot of flow schedules, we knew that was a future growth area. And then the impact and lineage is also available with the data management add-on. So that was a big driver for that. And like I said, we got lucky into the a la carte is no longer offered for anyone. So in terms of planning, yes, this is very ugly color coding, but what I'm trying to capture here, so I don't have to talk through each one. The left side is the pros and cons of Tableau Cloud, Tableau Server. Or is it, no, it is Cloud on the left. I'm pointing the right way. So Tableau Cloud is the pros and cons. Notice the only negative in red is, unless this has changed, I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find any evidence of performance recordings on cloud are not available. And they were on server because it's your server, so you could just change a configuration setting and make it work. So other than that, unless they have changed something since I made this speech 6 months ago, then performance recording was the only downside of cloud. And then there's a couple of yellows. And some of the surprises, I'll say, was we were worried that Postgres database was a yellow on the server side, because that was great. I was an administrator, a site admin, so I could handle all the Postgres database connections. But again, because it was IT controlled, I always had to go to IT to turn on that read-only user and to do some of the performance recordings, but then also to do the connection to the database. So even though that was a green for performance recordings on server, because it was no longer available, the Postgres database I called yellow because it was kind of a good thing in server, but it was hard to maintain. And surprisingly, admin insights have been a wonderful boon for us. It's been great. It's in a folder that you really can't touch or maintain, but you can customize it with your own workbooks off of the published data sources, and the extracts refresh automatically. I think Tableau has done a wonderful job from Tableau Online in the old days when we didn't have any admin reports or just those kind of standard static reports. And now we've got admin insights, which is a great benefit there. We like the idea we called it alpha beta prod in Tableau Server, where you could have 3 separate instances to test your deployments. Technically, you don't get that with cloud, but you do get 3 sites unless that licensing has changed. But 6 months ago or a year ago, we got it where you could be a cloud manager and have 3 separate sites. And the great use case for that was we migrated our SSO to Okta this year, which is now supported by Tableau. So that was a great move. And we actually used one of those secondary sites in Tableau Cloud to test out the Okta configuration. So it was a great test case for that. So advantage there. And then, of course, the biggest downside on the server side was the IT support. We needed IT if I wanted to connect the read-only user to read the Postgres database. We needed IT if somebody needed a new extract schedule to be set, because that's in server admin task. So all these server admin tasks that I had no control over were no longer an issue on cloud, because cloud is a site admin as the highest level, since there's no such concept as a server admin. So that kind of highlights some of the things. And if you do have questions, just stop me at any time, but I'm going to be mindful of time to get the rest of this covered. So what were our challenges? I'll just kind of throw them all on here and highlight some of them. I think I've spoken to them, but like I said, at the top of the list, this is not necessarily in priority order, but definitely a highlight that was certainly unexpected when it comes to a technical trainer like me doing a migration is communication. Like I said, I really did have to put on, I'll call my marketing hat. I had to develop and have maintained a monthly Tableau newsletter. I do a user spotlight from a Tableau user every month. So just ask them a few questions, get to know them, learn about how they learn Tableau and what they like and what they don't like. So that's a great communication method. And for our migration, 3 months in a row, I was, vigilant about posting, hey, this is the Tableau cloud migration. This is what's going to change. We did mandatory training for all creators. So all 100 creators got virtually trained on the transition. And I'll talk to that in a little bit. But communication is definitely a big part, and something that I did not anticipate being a big part of the job as a technical migration specialist working with consultants in that communication too, was definitely a new learning area for me, I'll say. And I'm new, similar to Joe's example. I was new to higher education when I came on board to Vanderbilt 3 years ago. So it was kind of a whirlwind of learning along with the migration. Nested groups, another thing I try to check. I don't think this has changed in the present day, but at our time, didn't support nested groups. And if anything, the server nested grouping limitation works better than the cloud, because with server, if you have nested groups, and let's say I'm a member of it, and I'm actually going to jump ahead because I had a slide with nested groups so you can see what I mean. Because it's right at the end. Yeah, so let's say, this is kind of our hierarchy of group structure, and it mimics the folder structure. So if I'm a member of all schools, let's say I'm a dean or the provost or, top level person at all schools overseen, then I am in that group. And then we trickle down to undergrad, and then the individual school. And then some of those individual schools even have subcategories. And then each of these Tableau groups have a comparable folder with the name of it with the Tableau removed from it. So the Tableau All Schools group has access to publish to and see and explore the Tableau All Schools folder. Well, in Tableau Server, if you were a member of all of these groups or the parent groups, it would put you in all schools, undergraduate, College of Arts and Sciences, and the dean automatically. But with Tableau Cloud, it only puts you in the innermost child group. So it was a manual process. It wasn't a showstopper. And one of the new things that came along a year ago that might have been beneficial now is the feature called group sets, because you can apply group sets and say, let's put all 4 of these group headings, these school headings, into a group set. And then you apply permissions on the group set, and it kind of clears out or works itself out so that the permissions work in a hierarchical setting. So nested groups, as far as I know, still not supported, but that was one of our limitations. So I just wanted to get back to that. All right, so, oh yeah, and then one of the biggest things, this little screen right here. And I don't know how many times I had to handle emails for this, because since we trained our creators, we had them covered with the learning, but all of our viewers didn't know about this URI, the lovely URI. I mean, who even knows that anymore? But yes, I mean, how many people are going to see that? And even myself, if I'm just breezing through and a little pop-up says, please enter your URI. Looks like a capital or a lowercase L. So what's somebody going to think? Oh, I'm going to put in the whole URL string. No, you have to put in Vanderbilt in lowercase letters, case sensitive, because it's the little component of the site name embedded within the full URL. And why this had to be prompted for all users instead of, just automatically filling it in once you say that you're in prod US East or whatever little pod that we were in. Unfortunately, that was the biggest hiccup for just communication wise. We had to, basically communicate with all the users that didn't go through training in a virtual setting that, hey, this is going to pop up. So I literally made a page for it and instructed people. And when the question was asked, we communicated, hey, don't put the whole URL. It's a URI, and you only need Vanderbilt in there. Our SSO at the time was unsupported. We had ping federate, but we migrated to Okta, so that was a great benefit. And that enabled us to use login-based license management, which helps us save some costs, because a user can be provisioned, but they're not licensed until they actually log in. A lot of times somebody makes a request, they say, give me access to Tableau, we grant it to them, and they wait 5 months to log in. In the old world, we didn't pay for viewers and explorers, so it was free, no cost. We licensed them and they were good to go. In the new world, if they get logged in and they get licensed, then, or if they get created as a Tableau user and they get licensed, we've consumed that viewer, holding. So if we have 250 viewer licenses, now we're one less short to come towards the 250 cap. So then we'd have to purchase more licenses. So the way we handle that is, if you haven't logged in yet, then you're unlicensed, and we have LBLMs turned on, which is just a little checkbox setting to make that work. We didn't have multiple sites, so that wasn't a big issue. That could be a big impact for handling that. And then our post guest reports were obsolete, but of course we can handle admin insights for that. Now, there were some challenges that didn't end up being a problem for us, but things you might experience if you're a different shop that has these things. So just watch out. Some of these improvements, I think, are streamlined in the new migration package, or in the new migration way to script things. We got Interworks help, so I'll show that. But if you have custom fonts, custom views, or URL actions pointing to your server URL, luckily we didn't, but that obviously has to change if it does. You could automate the embedded credentials for embedded workbook credentials, but it posed a security issue because your password would be in clear text, and we had to pass that on to Interworks. So we handled that directly, and I didn't do a script for it. Like I said, we only had 100 or so published data sources. So the embedded credentials only applied for published data sources, not the embedded workbooks. I think I said that wrong at the beginning of this statement, so sorry about that. Embedded credentials for published workbooks only was a manual process. And we didn't have the guest, but we used Tableau Public. And like I mentioned, group sets performance has improved, even though we can't do performance recordings, but there have been no complaints for performance from our users. Although you get the occasional hiccup, Tableau server goes down, or there's some, hack that goes on with the system where it comes down and Salesforce takes the server down, or you get little hiccups, I call it. But the system's always available, but sometimes people get kicked out. And then row level security was not an issue because we had already done user filters with groups, not with users. So we were using group filters, so that didn't impact anything. If you had done user filters, biggest change is you log on with an email in cloud, you log on with a user ID that's not necessarily an email in server, and you can't configure cloud to not be your email. So that was another limitation of change. But luckily for row level security, we were safe. What were the benefits? I've highlighted some of these, but we didn't have to use the VPN. We had SSO configured with Duo Mobile in the old days, but now since May, we migrated to Okta, and it's seamless multi-factor authentication. And because there's no VPN, Vanderbilt doesn't issue company phones. So if you wanted your phone to be on the VPN, it could be done, but it was a very tedious process that I never bothered to do. But now that we don't need VPN, a lot of our kind of out in the field, like campus dining, even the career center, or some of the other departments that are DAR, our development and alumni relations, they're prospecting a lot for new donors. They weren't in front of a computer all day because they're out in the field trying to make new business. So Tableau Mobile became a great benefit for those departments, and our HR department really leveraged it a lot more, with Tableau Pulse being a great mobile-friendly metric that you could use. We had lots of cloud connections that I mentioned, and Tableau Pulse is now enabled. You can embed that in a dashboard. This is something, having been a former Tableau employee, I can only speculate as to what the product line vision for the future is, but I can gather that it sounds like Tableau Pulse is never going to Tableau Server. So that's an AI component that people want. Although I will say, when people got Tableau Pulse, they thought automatically, oh, we have all of Tableau AI, right? But unfortunately, no, we don't have the desktop AI. We don't have Data Cloud or all the other pieces for Tableau Next. So people think they're getting AI with Pulse, but it's a very minor component. And then the surprising benefit of admin insights was definitely a welcome, happy change, even though we thought it might be quite a transition with losing all of our Postgres reports. It was also a good time to delegate administration to our project leads, admins, and let them administer the permissions on things. And like I said, treat it as an audit. So we went through the training, some of the things. This is just an old view of our dead URL link. Luckily, our IT department redirected it for 2 months through AWS. It did cost us a little bit because to keep the site open on the old server that was no longer in commission, but redirecting to the cloud server was a nice benefit, because then users that went to old Tableau server were automatically getting bounced to the new server in Tableau Cloud without doing anything. So IT helped us out with that. That was a great benefit for the redirect. It was worth the small price to Amazon to keep that alive for a couple more months till the end of the year. And then the newsletter, as I said, is kind of a snapshot of what it looks like. We would send that. We do an internal tug for Vanderbilt only employees, and we are not tied to the medical center, I should emphasize. So anybody that's Vanderbilt Medical, we have nothing to do with you. You know, we handle the School of Medicine, but we do not handle residential people at the actual hospital or the medical center. Totally separate entity. And then the consulting benefits, like I said, it was something I knew I wanted to go forth, and I just had to kind of sell my case to leadership to say, hey, we got a fixed fee. We've used, and we had a relationship with Interwork. So I should mention that helped the cause because they were our reseller of all our creator licenses. So whenever we make a request for a creator license, we actually do it through Interworks, and then they process the PO and then handle all the payments to Tableau, and then they give us the license directly. And of course, with cloud, licensing is much more self-service, but with server, you always had to input the keys which was another IT function. But Interworks handled all of the migration pieces. We got 3 people as part of this one-time fee. We had a dedicated project manager on the Interworks side. We had a dedicated developer, and of course, the sales rep just kind of monitoring our progress. We had the checklist, migration tools. Of course, we had having an Interworks developer, we had to clear governance access to Tableau server and cloud with our IT department. So that took a couple of weeks just by itself. And then automation with the add-on tools were not relevant. We had weekly checkpoints. And another kind of unforeseen benefit that we do at Vanderbilt is whenever we have an IT project with new software like this migration, Vanderbilt requires us to work with a project manager within the IT department to handle the liaisons of any technical work. And that was a great benefit. So not only did we have an Interworks project manager handling that management of timelines, we had a Vanderbilt project manager handling all the liaison and communication to the right people at IT or other departments to set everything up. So the other manual things as you have to plan for with a migration is at some point you got to lock down and freeze your content. So that for us was September 20th, about a month before we knew we were going live. Props to Tableau for giving us a couple of added 30-day trial licenses for Tableau Cloud, which is the way it was at least a year ago. They extended it for 3 or 4 months. So we were happy about that. It probably helped that I was a former employee, so I had a good relationship with the Tableau folks, but certainly talk nice to your Tableau sales rep, and they will probably help to accommodate you if you're going to make this big purchase to begin with anyway. But the benefit here was I offloaded all creator administration to the creators themselves. So after September 20th, if the migration was successful for movement of content, I had no other responsibilities. And I took the creators through training and said, hey, after September 20th, any changes you make, here's how you got to do it. You got to sign on to Tableau server, disconnect from the server, reconnect to the cloud, and republish your content manually and go through that. And I took them through it, and that worked wonderfully. Yeah, you had a few questions and hand-holding along the way, but it definitely saved me the maintenance of having to do, thousands of workbooks for changes after September 20th. And then another manual process that I had our end users and mostly creators do. We built I call it a report. Again, not very pretty dashboard, but it was just a little filtered lookup table for every user and the groups that they belong to. And it was set up, and it's still live today. So anybody that wants to look at their groups of access and say, hey, what groups does Evan belong to? You can do it through this little view that's in our public area or our open area. Who can see what in Tableau Cloud? So that's a very popular workbook that people go to and say, hey, I need so-and-so to have access to this folder. Can you add them? And that's the way we handle it. So I am the one go-to person for permissions, but we let our creators and our power users handle who needs to be in those groups. And then I just do the actual administration. And there's a screen of the manual data sources. Like I said, this could have been scripted. We had 100 or so data sources. So again, I offloaded it to the creators, took them through the training and said, hey, every one of you have to repopulate your credentials on your reports that you own and then publish them to the cloud. So that was easy, no work for me. I made a little SharePoint page about the little URI pop-up that was causing problems. I didn't take explorers and viewers through training, but they were easily accessible if they had questions. We set up office hours and other times to meet and email as well. So the benefits and the challenges, kind of like a Tetris game, you got to fit all the pieces together in the right place. With creators, they no longer needed a key to validate because in Tableau Cloud, it's the licensing is handled, in our case, with Interworks, but eventually indirectly through Tableau. So once we buy a new creator license or a new viewer batch, then there's no need to validate. They're automatically added. And then with LBLM, login-based license management, they're unlicensed until they actually log on the first time. So this was managed at the server level prior, so that was an IT function. Now, of course, IT is no longer involved. So that was one of the hidden cost savings, was the man hours or the person hours for the IT department. We had 3 people in IT that handled our upgrades once or twice a year, all the server schedules and all those other things that a server admin did. And usually through me, because I was the Tableau expert, they were just IT people. So, it was a bit of a difficulty. They're no longer involved with Tableau. So it freed them up, people hours there. And like I said, I talked about LBLM. So that is a setting for all of our creators that we do and the viewers and explorers. So the problem that I discovered with this, because we had an unsupported SSO at migration time, it was ping federate, then we ended up not being able to turn on LBLM. So what I had to do was make local groups that allowed this, and that's what this little checkbox was. So I literally made a group called local creators, local viewers, local explorers, and checked the box there and unchecked grant role and sign in for all of our Tableau groups. So that still enabled them, if they're in the creators group, they're going to get logged in, unlicensed, and then they get granted creator site role. Or if they were an explorer or a viewer, it would go accordingly. So that was a nice feature. I showed you a little bit about the nested groups already. I know we're running short on time. I talked about the project structure. This is just kind of a glimpse of what Vanderbilt looks like. We have radical collaboration, samples, and testing is open for everybody. And then the rest of these, CDS stands for Certified Data Sources. We don't use our default folder at all. We put schools in its own secure category, and then non-academic university administration in a separate folder. And then the subfolders kind of trickle down from there. But that's the way we set up permissions, and it worked smoothly going from cloud to server. We got the new little folder structure little feature that got added in the server when we migrated to cloud. So that was a new 25 feature. So in summary, with all that said, I want to give you the benefit and the confidence that you can migrate. I know we are a small shop. It might not be in the same stats that your university has for migration, but if you can realize the benefits of Tableau Pulse and some of the other pieces that I showed here, hopefully you'll realize those benefits. And, with a couple little helping hands or having some consultancy there as a support, that can certainly help you. Or if you have coders or scripters in-house or an IT department that can do that, then definitely take advantage of it. But I hope you found this useful. And of course, ask me any questions and I'll be happy to answer if you do have them.
There were a few questions in the chat. We are going to maybe let you answer them in the chat. In the meantime, we're going to close out today's session. Thank you so much, Evan. This was amazing. I feel like I've seen different parts of this multiple times, and each time I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was possible. Like there's new stuff every time. So we had planned to do a very quick recap of Tableau Conference 2025. You've already heard us talk a little bit about this. We've had a lot of really great presentations at TC25, including Evan's. I think there were about a dozen or so, our teachers' dozen of presentations by folks who work in education or were about education. We've had some examples and some hands-on training sessions. I think the parameters one. And then there was also an education meetup, which was in the top 3 in terms of attendance. So go us, go all of education in this space. So we do want to, there's only a couple minutes left, but if you attended Tableau Conference or watched TC on Salesforce Plus, we want to know what your favorite takeaways were. We're going to see what we can do with that in the future because we really are starting to look at Tableau Conference 2026, which is in 6 months and change, so soon, but so far. We want to know, not only what you got out of last year's or previous year's Tableau conferences, but we also want to know what you all want to see at Tableau conference in this coming year so that we can push as a higher education community to get more education content and content that is actually useful and applicable to the work that we do. And you guys have those answers, right? Like, you know what you want to see, you know what you want to learn. So a couple of quick reminders, we've mentioned the Iron Viz qualifiers are happening right now. There soon will be a call for proposals. We don't know when. We hope it's soon, but probably not till November, maybe even in December. So if you're thinking about presenting at HEDW, again, you can also try to submit that same proposal at a Tableau conference, or just start thinking about what you might want to present. And then there is also a save the date that we are putting in the chat right now, so that you can be notified when Data 26 is officially open for registration. So with all that said, again, thank you everyone for attending. We do want to know what you thought of today's meeting, so please fill out the feedback form. We have a really exciting November session set up as well. We've got David Ogden, who is our K-12 cousin over in the Renton School District in Northwest Washington. We've got Kaylee Turner and Carl Courtwright from the Catalytics team at Western Carolina sharing a subsequent enrollment dashboard that they've built to see what happens when students stop out. And then Stephanie Johnson is going to share some masking with us in Now You See Me, Now You Don't. Perhaps some similar masking as what we saw in Joe's presentation earlier. And as always, if you want to present, or if you know something that you want to see presented, feel free to nominate a speaker or submit a presentation proposal at the URL that we posted in the chat. And we also have a whole bunch of other TUG meetings that are happening over the next several weeks. I'm going to paste them all in the chat here. I'm not going to talk about them, although I will say that K through 12 TUG, someone you know is going to be there. It's going to be me. Of course, I didn't actually get the full link in the chat because I can't copy and paste properly. But Data Dev Day is going to be really great. Some of the Tableau Pulse and AI features, or some of the AI features that Evan did not mention or mentioned were not part of their cloud implementation, will be talked about at Data Dev Day. And yeah, there's just going to be a lot of really great stuff happening in the TUG space over the next several weeks. Oh, sorry. I don't know how to move slides. You'd think I'd be used to this by now, but a few years in. Anyway, thank you all. Thank you again to Joe and Evan for presenting, and thank you all for coming to our October HETUG meeting.